Am I the a-hole for being hurt that my mother-in-law wanted to exclude my daughter from Thanksgiving and Christmas to protect my sister-in-law? Advice needed. I 31 female. I'm married to my husband Tyler 32 male and I gave birth to our first child, a baby girl, almost 3 months ago. I love Tyler very much and I always felt grateful that I married into the family I did. I grew up with a single mom and it was always just the two of us. I love my mother dearly, but I always wished I had a larger family unit with siblings when I was a little. My mom passed away from ovarian cancer about 2 years ago, and so now I truly don't have family apart from my in-laws. By contrast, my husband's parents are happily married and he's one of 4 children. Everyone has always been kind and welcoming to me, and I always have a blast at their holidays and family reunions. The only exception is Tyler's twin sister Ashley. Since I met her, Ashley has been cool and standoffish towards me, especially compared to her friendly younger brothers and parents. She's never been outright mean to me, but she's also never made much of an effort to ask me questions or get to know me. I know she also has some resentment towards Tyler and sometimes comments on the fact that he's the favorite and that everything comes easy to him. Some of her comments irk me, since I know how hard Tyler has worked for his success and also see that he has struggles he doesn't share with the family since he doesn't like to burden others. I've never said anything about the comments since Tyler accepts it's the way she is and doesn't get too bothered by her. Even though Ashley and I are far from best friends, I've been sad to learn that she's had a hard time getting pregnant. She and her husband have been trying for around 2 years now and she recently had a miscarriage. I've tried to be mindful of what she's going through and intentionally avoided talking about my pregnancy and now baby around her. I even declined my mother-in-law's offer to throw me a baby shower since I thought it would be difficult for Ashley with everything going on. With that being said, the entire family has been incredibly excited about my daughter. My husband is the first of his siblings to have a child, and so it's an exciting time and transition for the family. Yesterday, my mother-in-law and father-in-law came to our house for dinner. My mother-in-law said she had something difficult to speak with us about and started talking about what a hard few years it's been for Ashley. My mother-in-law said Ashley is excited for us, but it's painful to see me with an infant when she's wanted to be a mother for so long. She said Ashley is dreading the holidays because she's worried everyone will be focusing on and fussing over the new baby. My mother-in-law said that she was looking forward to spending the holidays with us, especially since it's our daughter's first Thanksgiving and Christmas, but she's trying to think of her daughter's feelings as well. My mother-in-law basically asked if we could either sit out on the family Thanksgiving and Christmas this year or hire a sitter to watch our daughter so all the focus won't be on her. My mother-in-law even floated the idea of me staying home with the baby and my husband stopping by quickly to say hello. My husband was livid. He said that Ashley should be the one to stay home if she can't manage her emotions, and my mother-in-law said that Ashley is going through a lot and needs her family right now. My husband said he's not celebrating the holidays with the family unless the baby and I are both included. I started crying, which surprised everyone since I rarely show emotion. I said that I feel terrible for Ashley, but I'm incredibly sad and disappointed that my daughter is being excluded. I explained that I don't have family now that my mother is gone, and so I really want my child to have a strong bond with her grandparents, uncles, and aunt. My mother-in-law said there will be opportunities in the future for her to bond with the family. I said I don't think I'll feel welcomed in the future now that I know they're so willing to exclude both myself and my daughter. I said it's sad that we're clearly not viewed as an important part of the family since my mother-in-law was so quick to suggest we both stay home. I said I understand that Ashley is her daughter and so her loyalty will always be to her first, but also I'm very hurt by the request. My mother-in-law started to backtrack and said that she loves me and her granddaughter very much and that this clearly wasn't the right way to handle the situation. She said she was trying to do the right thing, but she didn't spend enough time thinking everything through. My husband was still fuming and asked his parents to leave even though his mom was crying and begging to work things out. I've gotten several calls from my mother-in-law today. I know I should give her a call and hear what she has to say, but I'm still so hurt. My husband is also upset and doesn't want to participate in the holidays this year. Maybe I'm being selfish under the circumstances, but I can't believe how easily they could exclude my baby. Am I the a-hole?
Am I the a-hole for telling my wife she's just as racist as her parents? I, 53 male, am white. My wife of 30 years, Naomi, is Japanese. We have 3 kids. This story focuses on my oldest son, Kyle, 28. When Kyle first got to college, he began dating a Japanese girl, and when he introduced her to my wife, Naomi loved her. They didn't end up working out, but for the past 3 years, my son has been seeing Donnie, a black girl. My son was in medical school across the country, and he ended up meeting Danny because they both were volunteers at a soup kitchen. I remember the first time he sent a picture of her. My wife immediately didn't like her. I'm going to try to phrase this without sounding ignorant myself, but she looks like the urban black girl most think of when African American women. She has the big hoop earrings, the long nails, the long eyelashes. I think she looks stunning, but I've never been in a situation where I was involved in African American culture. Recently, my son moved back to our city for residency, and Danny moved with him and started law school. They were staying in an Airbnb while looking for a place, and this week, they finally found one. So they invited us over for dinner. Donnie cooked soul food, and this stuff was amazing. I complimented her food, and my wife gave me the side eye. Naomi then pulled out her phone and asked Donnie why does she dress like that, and why was she twerking in public. Kyle asked his mom what her problem was. I then took the phone to scroll through Danny's Instagram, and while she did have some videos of her having fun, she also had plenty of pictures of her academic achievements. Before Danny could answer, I told my wife Danny is young and having fun. I asked, did she see that Danny graduated cum laude or all the time she volunteered? My wife looked angry that I would bring that up. Naomi then said that she thinks that Danny isn't good enough for our son. Danny then asked why Naomi loved Kyle's ex so much. She didn't graduate with honors. She has many different boys that she posted on social media. Danny then said it's evident the reason Naomi doesn't like her is because of her race. Naomi doubled down and said, so what? I never heard Kyle even disrespect his mother, but he told her to get the fuck out. Naomi left crying. In the car on the ride home, I asked her what was her problem. She asked why didn't I defend her. I said because she was being a racist and a hypocrite, and she's acting just like her parents. Her parents didn't like me because I was white. She just said it's different and was just silent on the way home. And when we got to the house, she locked herself in the room and started crying. I can't feel bad for her because if someone disrespected my wife the way she disrespected Danny, I would have absolutely did the same exact thing Kyle did. But am I the a-hole because I was also harsh towards her in this situation?
Am I the a-hole for kicking my brother out of my house after what he did at my daughter's 15th birthday? I, 38F, have a 15-year-old daughter, Emma. For her birthday, I decided to throw a small gathering at our house with her best friend, Mia, and a few family members. My brother, Evan, 45M, offered to help out. Emma adores Evan. He's the cool uncle who's always joking around and treating her like an adult. I've always been uneasy about how permissive he is, but I never imagined he'd cross such a massive line. The evening started fine with music, snacks, and laughter. At one point, I stepped away to finish some work, trusting Evan to keep an eye on things. About an hour later, I went to check on them. I couldn't find Emma, Mia, or Evan anywhere. After asking a few guests, someone said they were in Emma's bedroom, playing board games. I had a bad feeling about it, so I headed upstairs. What I walked into made my stomach drop. Mia was half passed out, slumped on the bed in Emma's room, barely able to sit up and throwing up all over herself. Emma and Evan were hovering over her, both panicked and trying to keep her awake. I immediately demanded to know what had happened. Emma looked petrified and didn't say much, but Evan, calmly, almost nonchalantly, admitted he had let them drink. When I pressed for details, he shrugged and said Mia had had about 600 milliliters of vodka. He said it like it was no big deal, casually adding, "It's fine, I was supervising them." I was horrified. Mia was barely conscious, struggling to even breathe properly, and Evan acted like this was normal. I called an ambulance right away, and Mia was rushed to the hospital. The doctors confirmed she had alcohol poisoning. Thankfully, she'll recover, but the situation could have ended far worse. I was shaking with guilt, fury, and disbelief. When I got back home, I unleashed all my anger on Evan. I told him he had crossed an unforgivable line by putting two 15-year-olds in danger. He tried to justify himself, saying teens are going to drink anyway, and he thought it was better if they did it around him. He even smirked while saying it, which made my blood boil. I told him to pack his things and get out of my house immediately. I also told him he's not welcome around Emma until further notice. What crushed me the most was when Emma later admitted, tearfully, that this wasn't the first time Evan had let her drink with him. She begged me not to cut him off and said I was overreacting, claiming Evan didn't mean for things to go so far. She also blames me for ruining her birthday and won't speak to me now. I'm devastated and furious all at once. I feel like I failed to protect my daughter, but at the same time, I can't just forgive Evan for what he did. Emma doesn't see it that way though, and thinks I'm being unfair. So am I the a-hole?
The disappearance of my neighbor. For years, the apartment across the hall from mine was empty. No one ever moved in, and the landlord never put up a for rent sign. It was just this silent, dusty space I'd pass by every day. But then, one day, the door was slightly ajar. I could hear the faint sound of a piano playing. It was unsettling, because no one was supposed to be living there. A week later, I noticed a man going in and out. He was tall, with dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept in days. He wore the same black coat every day, and barely spoke to anyone. I assumed he was a new tenant, but something about him felt off, like he was hiding something. He never made eye contact, never smiled, and always seemed to be watching his back. One night, I was taking out the trash when I saw him struggling to carry a large, heavy bag down the stairs. It was weird, given that the elevator was right there. The bag looked like it could barely fit through the doorway. It was the kind of bag you see hikers use when they're off to scale a mountain, except it was stuffed to the brim, almost bursting. The way he was dragging it, as if it weighed a ton, made my stomach twist. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. I decided to follow him, keeping a distance. He went out the back entrance, where the streetlights barely illuminated the alley. The darkness swallowed him as he dumped the bag into the trunk of an old, beaten-up car. Then, he stood there for a moment, looking around like he was making sure no one saw him. I ducked behind a dumpster, holding my breath. He eventually got into the car and drove off into the night. The next morning, I noticed something strange. A red stain seeping out from under his apartment door. It looked like paint, but it was thick and dark. I knocked on his door, pretending to be concerned, but there was no answer. A chill ran down my spine as I backed away. Later that night, I decided to call the police anonymously. They showed up, knocked on his door, but there was no response. After a while, they left, telling me they couldn't do much without a warrant or evidence of a crime. The landlord even stopped by, but shrugged it off, saying the tenant was probably just out, but he never came back. Days turned into weeks, and there was no sign of him. I kept seeing that stain though. It didn't fade or dry up. It seemed to get darker and more pronounced every day. I couldn't take it anymore, so I decided to take matters into my own hands. One night, armed with a flashlight and a sense of dread, I picked the lock to his apartment. I know it was illegal, but curiosity and fear had consumed me. The air inside was thick and stale, filled with a sickly sweet smell that made me gag. The lights didn't work, so I had to use my flashlight. The living room was empty except for a single chair and a dusty piano. The same piano I had heard playing that very first day. The keys were cracked and stained with what looked like dried blood. I took a deep breath and walked further inside. The red stain led me to a closed door at the end of the hallway. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. I opened the door slowly. The room was dark except for a faint light coming from the window, casting eerie shadows. My flashlight beam landed on something horrifying. Photographs plastered all over the walls. Pictures of people from our building, including me. Some were taken in the hallway, others from outside my window. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This man had been watching us for who knows how long. But the worst part was the bed in the center of the room. It was covered with a black tarp, and beneath it, I could see a vague, human-like shape. I didn't need to lift the tarp to know what was underneath. My pulse pounded in my ears, and I stumbled back, knocking over a lamp that crashed to the floor. I ran out, my heart racing, feeling like I couldn't breathe. I called the police again, this time frantic, telling them everything I saw. They arrived within minutes, swarming the building. They broke down the door and stormed inside. I watched from the hallway, my knees shaking. When they emerged, they were pale and silent, their faces grim. One officer looked at me and shook his head, confirming my worst fear. The news broke the next morning. The man had been a wanted criminal, hiding in plain sight. He had lured multiple victims to his apartment over the years. The authorities found remains, evidence of his gruesome crimes, and a list of future targets. My name was on it, circled in red. It was like a nightmare come to life. I moved out the next week, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. To this day, I can still hear the faint sound of that piano playing whenever I close my eyes. The room across the hall has been sealed off since then, and no one talks about it. But sometimes, late at night, when the building is quiet, I swear I hear footsteps and a soft, haunting melody echoing through the walls.
Am I the a-hole for going off on my neighbor for always blocking my driveway? I, 27 female, have this ongoing issue with my neighbor. Let's call him Steve. Steve has too many cars for his driveway, and instead of figuring out a solution, he always parks one of them right in front of my driveway. At first, I tried to be polite about it. I'd go knock on his door or ring the bell to ask him to move his car whenever I needed to get out. The problem is, half the time, he doesn't even answer. So I'm just standing there, wasting time, and on a couple of occasions, I've been late to work because of him. And when I get home after a long day, sometimes I can't even park in my own drive because his car's in the way. It's infuriating. Every time I do manage to catch him, he's all apologetic and says, "Oh, sorry, it won't happen again." But guess what? It always happens again. Last week was the final straw. I had an important meeting at work and, of course, his stupid car was blocking my drive again. I knocked on his door. No answer. I rang the bell. Nothing. I was already stressed because I didn't want to be late again, and I just lost it. I started shouting, "Steve, move your car," over and over. Still nothing. So I stormed back to my car and started laying on the horn, just blaring it nonstop until he finally came out. He looked all annoyed, like I'm the one inconveniencing him. That's when I completely went off. I told him I was sick of this nonsense and that if it happened one more time, I was going to call the city or get his car towed. Of course, he tried the same, "I'm sorry, it won't happen again" thing, but I wasn't having it this time. I told him, "Steve, you say this every time, and every time it's a lie. You need to sort out your car situation because I'm done being nice about this." The thing is, a couple of neighbors were outside or peeking through their windows, so now I feel like I might have embarrassed him more than I needed to. Some friends think I was totally in the right because it's my driveway and he's been taking advantage. But a couple of others said I shouldn't have made such a scene and that I was being an hole for losing my temper like that. So, am I the a-hole for yelling at my neighbor and embarrassing him? Or do I have every right to be mad?
Am I the a-hole for telling my dad's wife I don't care that he's cheated on her at least 10 times now? My dad cheated on my mom when I, 16 male, was 4. The reason I know this is because my dad's affair. Partner now wife is a messy person, and not only is she willing to be the other woman, but she stayed with my dad even though he's cheated on her 10 times that she knows about. My sister, 19 female, and I never liked dad's relationship with his wife, and we never respected or liked her as a person either. We don't even like him. The only reason I still see him is a judge said I had to and threatened to make my mom pay money to the courts every time if I refused to see him, and I don't want to do that to her. So I go to their house and try to stay out of the house as much as possible. When we were younger, this woman did try to be a second mom to me and my sister, and we disrespected her to her face every time she tried. Even when she and my dad had kids together, we didn't see her any differently. To us, she was always the person who was half the reason our parents' marriage ended and dad was the other half. I know people don't like to blame the other woman, but she admits she knew. When we were younger, the reason we knew so much about it is because this woman would break down and cry because mom wouldn't speak to her. And she went on rambling fits about how mom was being unfair, and she should understand that this woman and dad were soulmates. And yes, she knew dad was married, but they had to be together, and mom should be compassionate. She also had crying fits about us not liking her, and how we shouldn't judge people for sleeping with married men or women because they're real people with real feelings, and nobody knows what it's like. A few weeks ago, she had another breakdown in front of me and asked why. I never support her when another of dad's affairs is found out. She told me dad cheated while she was having her last kid, and I told her I know, and she cried even harder and asked why I never supported her, and did I know he cheated again last month. I told her I don't care. I said he's repulsive, but so is she, and I don't care if he cheats on her every day for the rest of their lives because she's nothing to me. She broke down and tried to talk about all the times he cheated, and I told her that I don't care that it's been at least 10 times. She started yelling at me, and I walked away, but since that day, when my dad's week comes, she's whining whenever I'm nearby and trying to talk me into treating her better, and complaining because my sister blocked her when she tried to talk to her, which came after my sister laughed at her while she was crying on the phone to her. Am I the a-hole?
Am I the a-hole for telling my sister my feelings about her have not changed after she confronted me for telling her fiancé the truth? 7 years ago my sister had an affair with my ex-husband. We were still married at the time, I believed happily, and she was his mistress. I caught them together and banished both of them from my life. I divorced him. I told her to get away from me, and the two of them stayed together for a couple of years and had a child. My sister tried to reconcile with me 5 different times. I rejected her and told her I would never forgive her for what she did, and I did call her some names and wish for some bad things to happen to her, i.e. I wished for him to cheat on her and to destroy her life like they did mine, and I told her she'd deserve it all and not to cry to me if she caught anything off of him. I actually did a full STD/STI panel after finding out he'd been cheating on me with her. I was negative, but you can never be too careful, and he never denied there being more. I have been 100% no contact with my sister since, and I never met her child. Not even when ex cheated while she was pregnant and she ended up homeless. I told our family members I would not accept being around her. A couple of weeks ago this guy reached out to me. He's engaged to my sister and was mad I wasn't there to meet him at the dinner my parents hosted to meet him for the first time. He said my sister was so upset, etc., that she had wanted me to forgive her, etc., that he felt I was shitty to be mad at her dating an ex of mine. I corrected him and said she was his mistress, that I was married to him, still actively married when they had an affair, and I told him I caught them in my home and my bed. He didn't reply. Several days afterward my sister showed up and was pissed off at me for telling him what I did because he left her. She told me I should be willing to put the past behind us and reconcile, and to stop treating her like she's a criminal or evil. She said I act like she repulses me. I told her because she does, and I told her my feelings had not changed at all in 7 years. She cried and told me one of us could die and we'd never reconcile if I'm not willing to try, and I said I would not care. I told her she could die tomorrow and I would not regret my decision not to reconcile. I told her I no longer cared what happened to her or if she was okay or not. She left in tears. My parents were so angry she confronted me. They had already been disgusted with her being the other woman, but to confront me for for correcting her lie. They said it showed she had not grown at all. While my aunt told me I had no need to be so cruel after time had passed. She told me I'm treating my sister worse than she treated me and that I should be ashamed of myself for saying I wouldn't care if she died because it's an evil thing to say to anyone, let alone family. Am I the a-hole?